You know that nagging feeling that something is just off? That the world doesn't quite fit right? What if that's not a flaw in you, but a flaw in the world itself? That's the whole idea behind Ken Peacock's You Were Not Built for This World. And this explainer, well, it doesn't start with an answer. It starts with a feeling I bet a lot of us recognize.
Right out of the gate, the author hits you with this line. And he's not talking about being asleep in bed. He means asleep inside a system that started telling you who you were and what you should want from the moment you could understand words. But for some people, that programming, it just never fully takes. It's not some big dramatic awakening. It's quieter than that. It's more of a slow, creeping awareness, a constant low-level discomfort, a single thought that just keeps bubbling up no matter how many times you push it down.
And that's it. That's the feeling the book really taps into. That suspicion that the world you see isn't the full story. And the main point here is, if you feel this way, you're not crazy. You're just early.
So what is this feeling, really? According to the source, it's not a malfunction. It's a signal. Think of it like a check engine light for your soul. It's telling you that there's a huge misalignment between who you are and the world you've been dropped into.
At the core of this whole thing is a concept called the system. Now, the argument is that our world isn't broken or chaotic. Oh no, it's actually working perfectly, exactly as it was designed. But here's the catch. It wasn't designed for you to flourish. It was designed for extraction.
And this is where it gets real. What is it extracting? Well, for starters, your attention, which gets captured by algorithms and then sold off. Your labor, which fuels these giant engines of growth you might never see a real benefit from. Your fear, which is a fantastic tool to keep you consuming and compliant. And even your very identity, shaped more by what you buy than by who you actually are.
And this is the part that can be tough to swallow. Your personal fulfillment, your happiness, your sense of purpose. To the system, it's totally irrelevant. The only thing it needs from you is for you to be functional. A functional worker, a functional consumer, a nice, predictable cog in the machine. You're thriving? Well, it's just not on the agenda.
So that begs a pretty big question, right? How does a system like this keep itself going? The book's answer is simple. It starts early. It argues that your worldview, the very lens through which you see everything, wasn't something you chose. It was installed.
And this software metaphor is honestly brilliant. Think about it. Culture writes the basic operating system, the foundational beliefs. The media is constantly pushing out the latest patches and software updates to keep you in line with the current version. And school? Well, school often takes that boundless curiosity you're born with and formats it into something a lot more manageable, compliance.
Of course, when you feel out of sync with all this programming, it's easy to think you're the one who's unstable. But this quote completely flips that on its head. It suggests that feeling unstable inside a structure that's fundamentally flawed isn't a sign of madness, it's a sign of sanity. And this programming, it's not just about what to believe, it's about what to fear. We're taught from a young age to be terrified of things like poverty, or being judged by others, or being alone. But we're not really taught to fear the things that are arguably way more dangerous: submission, living in untruth, or a quiet kind of enslavement to ideas that aren't ours.
So what do we do when we feel off? We often look for a quick fix, right? A jolt of motivation from a self-help book or a guru. But the book has a pretty cynical take on this. It calls motivation emotional caffeine. It's a temporary buzz that keeps you going, but it distracts you from asking if the road you're on even makes sense in the first place.
So instead of just looking for more gas to put in the tank, the book says we should stop the car and ask some dangerous questions. These are the questions the system really hopes you'll never ask. And the first one is the simplest, but also the most powerful. Why? Why am I actually doing any of this?
The next question pushes us to look outside of ourselves. You know, a lot of us just assume that being completely exhausted is just a normal part of being an adult. But this question forces us to look at the structure. Who or what actually benefits from you being burnt out and tired all the time?
And then there's the last one, the most personal one. This question gets right to the heart of that nagging feeling we started with. It's about that weird dissonance you feel when you achieve all the goals the system set out for you, and you still feel like something incredibly important is missing. Now, asking these questions leads to clarity, but you've got to be warned. The book makes it very clear that this is not some blissful, happy process. In fact, that first stage of seeing the world as it really is can be incredibly painful.
The book argues that this kind of awakening isn't about finding joy, at least not at first. It's about grief.
It's the process of mourning. Mourning the years you lost, the energy you spent, and the person you might have become if you hadn't traded it all for an illusion of safety and success.
But here's where things start to turn. Yes, the truth can feel like a sharp, clean wound. It hurts, but it's a one-time thing. Living a lie? That's a chronic ache. It's that low-grade pain you feel every single day, even if you can't put your finger on why.
So, once you've moved through that pain and grief, what's next? The book doesn't just leave you there. It proposes a new operating system, a set of principles for how to live in this world with your eyes wide open. He calls it the Rebel Thinker's Code.
And the first rule of this new code is all about intellectual sovereignty. It's basically a promise to yourself that you won't blindly accept what you're told anymore. You're going to personally vet and question the sources of power and information in your life.
This next one is a huge challenge to our natural instinct to fit in. It's an argument against outsourcing your thinking to the crowd. It's a reminder that popularity has never, ever been a reliable indicator of what's true.
And this last principle might just be the toughest one of all. It reframes the big choice in life. It's not about pain versus comfort. It's about authentic clarity versus a comfortable blindness. It's a call to choose truth, especially when it's hard.
And this all leads to the final core message. Freedom, in this new way of thinking, isn't something that's just going to be handed to you. It's not a prize you get for playing by the rules. It's an act of seizure, something you have to actively take for yourself. And so, we end not with an answer, but with a challenge. After looking at all these ideas, the system, the programming, the painful path to clarity, the book leaves you with one last very active question. It's a question that takes this whole discussion from abstract theory and makes it deeply personal. What untruth will you stop believing, starting right now?